Hey everyone, it's me, Rami Marks, your Tangled Yogi out here in Northern California. Welcome to the Double Delight Zentangle class. I'm so excited to bring this to you. I'm going to teach it for the Napa Public Library tomorrow. So let's talk about the things that we'll need for class. I'm going to be working with the Micron PN Pen, but you can use your favorite Tangle pen. I have the Identipen that I'm going to be working with. This is a thick nib pen, so if you have a regular Sharpie pen, you can use that in lieu of the Identipen. You could use the Faber-Castell brush pen or the Graphite pen from Micron. Those are all great pens. I'm going to be working with a white paint pen, but you could also work with the Uniball gel white pen or the Sakura white pen. And I'm also going to be working with a graphite pencil and a blending stump. Now, if you don't have a blending stump, you can always use a Q-tip in lieu of that. And this is just a regular number 2 pencil. You know me, I'm a Prismacolor girl, so grab your Prismacolor pencils and we're going to have a lot of fun with this particular piece. Now, if you don't have Prismacolor pencils, just grab whatever you have and make do with what you've got. Remember, this is all about having fun. I am going to be working on the Genesis tile today. This tile is in the Tangled Yogi shop. It's super smooth and great for doing color pencil work on. I love, love, love this tile. So if you want to check it out, you can head over to tangledyogi.com. Now, if you don't have the tile, you can always just draw a square in your sketchbook that's 4.5 by 4.5 inches, and you're good to go. So with that said, let's get started with Double Delight. So you can see that I've got my tile here ready to rock and roll. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to grab my pen just for a minute. This is my Micron pen, and I'm going to take the cap off here. And you're going to see me just put the cap on where the edge of my paper is, and I'm just going to mark a little bit of a line right there, right where the edge of the cap is. And that's going to be my guide for how large I'm going to make the space here. So we're going to start by making what we call a string in Zentangle. And so all I'm going to do is just try to make as straight of a line as I can here. I'm not going to use a ruler. I'm just going to freehand it here. And then once I have that, I'm going to turn my piece again, grab the cap, bring it up to the edge, and I'm going to go ahead and make another line so that I get pretty much an equal amount here. So I'm just going to go ahead and just draw the line as well as I can. And you can see that's not too bad, and it's a pretty faint line. This is just to give us a guide for what we're about to do. So a string is just a way of building a composition inside of a piece so that when we're ready to tangle, we have a place to put them in. Now you can see I have a nice square in here, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with my pencil here, and I'm very gently going to make what we call a narrow aura. And a narrow aura is just like what it sounds like. It's an echo line that's very, very thin. So I've got now my string in which I'm going to create. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit more with this string, but if you want to pause me here and make your string, then that will work just fine. So we're going to add a little bit more to the string by coming over a little bit, and we're going to make 2 more squares in this area right here. So you can see that I'm looking for a way to make my squares as even as I can here, and they're a little bit narrow, but I think they'll do. And then I'm going to come over here and do the same thing. So I'm just going to come in and make another square, and then I'll come in and make another square. And that's why I'm doing this in pencil instead of in pen, so that this is all ready to go when I want to ink it in. Okay, so now get that going, and then when you're ready, we're going to pick up our pens and start to ink it in. So you can see I've got my pen handy here, and I'm just going to go nice and slow. You can see that I'm letting my hand rest on the desk so that it's nice and steady. And if that works for you, that's great. Just taking your time, and I always do my inking in the same way that I started so that I remember how I made this really nice string here. This is one of my favorite strings in the Zentangle playbook, as it were. I love to use this. I teach it a lot, and it's just great for making beautiful compositions. I'm going to come in and I'm going to start to build. Just like so. And then we'll come over here and I'll build just like so. So take a moment to do yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we're going to start our first tangle. Okay, so I'm going to bring in a little scratch piece of paper here, and you can see that I've written down the name of the tangle. This is called folium, and it's a fragment tangle, and a fragment just means that it's a tangle that's reduced down to a singular piece. And so what we're going to do for folium is we're going to come in from the middle of each section in here, and we're going to bring in a little line with a teardrop on it. So it looks a little something like this. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to pool our ink into the little teardrops. Now what I'm going to do is at the end of each line, I'm going to make what looks like a little triangle. And you can already start to see that that's built a really nice kind of petal-like shape. And then I'm going to pool my ink into the spaces. Now with these pens, remember, the lighter you go, the more the ink flows. So if you're really pushing on your pen, see if you can go lighter. Now it also depends on how old your pen is too. So if you've got an older pen, let it go and go get yourself another one. Remember, when you're working with good quality materials, you're going to have a better experience. So we've got our fragment here. Let's start to bring it into the composition. It's such a pretty tangle, isn't it? So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to start right at the top. So you can see that I've got this, it's more like a rectangle than a square, but it'll work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm just going to start by bringing these pieces in, just like so. And then once again, I'm going to make those triangular-like shapes into the piece. And this is such a fun fragment because once you start to build the pattern, it's really beautiful. I'm going to come in and I'm going to pool my ink, just like we did before. And for me, I could pool ink all day. It's for me, it's a very relaxing part of Zentangle. You can just let your mind relax. Coming in right here. And right here. And just letting it go. Looking pretty good, so let's do it again. We're going to come down and I'm just going to try to line it up with what I just did before. So you can see that I'm going to drop down and try to keep everything in the same space. And then I'll come in and I'll pool. Now here's where things get interesting. You can see I've got this triangle here, so I'm going to line up another triangle here to try to make a little diamond so that as this pattern continues, it starts to develop what we call a meta tangle in there. So I'll come in, working with the sides. Just like so. Now we're only going to do 3 on this side. We're going to leave the space at the bottom blank. So just if you're getting a little bit ahead of me here, you want to make sure that you leave that space at the bottom blank. We're going to be doing something different there. So I'm going to go just one more here. And once again, coming in, making those little teardrop shapes. And then once again, making it so that your little diamond shape starts to show itself there. I'll come over here and do that. And then I'm going to pool my ink. So go ahead and finish up yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we'll work on the opposite side here. Have fun with this. So you can see that I have turned the tile here, and so I've got the blank space that's going to be up at the top, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in again and start again. So it's the same thing on this side, and I love Zentangle for the repetition. That's really when you can get into the zen of it. You know what you're doing, and you can just let your mind be present with the one task that's at hand. You know, even if this was the only tangle that you did all day today, that would be enough. So I'm just going to pull my ink into these spaces and then pull on the outside edge. Now when we come back and do our shading on this, it's really a spectacular tangle to shade. I have to say, the more simple a tangle is, the more I love to shade it. It's just, for me, one of those things that I take delight in. I'm just going to come in, and I'm just going to continue this the way that I did with the first block. So I'm just going to go down and finish these 2. You go ahead and do yours. Remember to soften in your shoulders, relax in your breath. So if you tend to hold your breath while tangling, let it back in. And just remember, this is for fun. Isn't that so fun? I love that tangle. It's really beautiful. The pattern is always so cool. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start to bring back in my sketch piece of paper here, and we're going to learn another tangle. And this tangle is called olan, and I love this tangle because it's super easy but beautiful and graphic in nature. So basically what it is you draw a heart, and once you have the heart in there, you're going to go ahead and you're going to create a little bit of a spiral on each side of the heart here. Once you have that, you're going to see me come in, and then I'm going to go out, and I'm going to start to create this outlined effect, right? So I'm coming in and I'm going out, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to flare out just a little bit and drop into the center like so. Let's go ahead and zoom in on that a little bit so you can see that more up close. So same thing on this side. I'm going to come in, and then I'm going to go out, so you can see that I'm outlining here a little bit, and then I'm going to come in and flare so that I get this really beautiful piece in the center. Now, the way that she does it is she creates these little lines that come out from the center and kind of emanate outward, which I thought was very cool. And that in itself is a really beautiful tangle, but what I wanted to do was I wanted to make it look like petals. So you're going to see me come in and kind of arc the edges a little bit. I'll do the same thing on the opposite side. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to pool my ink. And I'm going to pull my ink back in here too, so this really gets kind of this really graphic pop. So that is Olan, and I just love this for Valentine's Day. It's a great tangle and it has a very Art Nouveau kind of feel to it. So let's take this tangle and start to bring it into our piece here. I'm going to zoom out just a skosh here so that you can see what I'm up to. And I'm going to take my pen and put it down, and I'm going to pick up my graphite pencil again. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a little guideline for myself that's going to go across the square in a diagonal angle, because I want to fill the space as much as I can. I'm going to take the piece and I'm going to turn it so that the square looks like a diamond. And I'm going to use my points to help me build the heart. Okay? So what this is going to look like is I'm going to start with my graphite pencil here, and I'm just going to go ahead and look kind of for where the midpoint is. And if you wanted to, you could even take a line and go across just to give you a guide for where the midpoint is. I'm going to start by coming in and making a fairly large heart. And I'll do that right in through here. And then I'll flip it and I'll do the same thing again. So just coming down about the same amount as I did before. And I'm going to come up, touch the other heart, and come out, and then I'll go again and come out. So I'm using those points there, and you can see that I'm going to kind of clean up that line a little bit. So once I've got my hearts the way that I want them, I'm going to pick up my pen. So I'm going to come in and I'm just going to start to build that heart. Coming in and touching the edge. Coming in and touching the edge. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and start to build those spirals, just like how we did before. Same thing over here. Just building the spiral. Once I've got the spiral the way that I want it, I'm going to come in and then I'm going to go out. Remember that idea of creating that kind of flared edge? I'm going to do that right there. So you can see how it's kind of booming away. If I had stayed narrow, it would have stayed closer. I'm going to come in and then come back around, flare, and come back and in. And that builds that really cool feeling. And then I'll come in and I'll start to build the lines that are going to work out from the center here. So I'm going to just go ahead and let that one come out from the center, and then I'll start to move outward with the flared lines in here. So it's almost like rays of the sun. And then I'll go ahead and I'll arc off these little pieces. Same thing over here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pool my ink into these spaces and get that really cool graphic feeling in the heart. I just think that this tangle is really cool. And then I'll come up into these areas over here and pool my ink. And I'll just kind of carry that outward. I think I'll make one more petal right there. And then come over here and do the same thing. It's got such a cool feeling to it. I really like that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn my piece. And if you need to pause me here, you're absolutely welcome to. Now, I'm actually looking at the center. You see how I've got this really cool diamond that's kind of showed up? That's another meta tangle there, which I love when you're not really thinking about it, but you're putting two patterns together and it makes another pattern. If I had carried these hearts out in different directions, there'd be more diamonds, which would be really cool. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just start to build my heart, but I'm thinking about that diamond in there and trying to keep it as clean as I can, if I can, because it would be really cool to put tipple in there if I could. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with those spirals again. So I'm just going to go in. And I'm thinking about the way that I did the first one and trying to be as cohesive as I can. But remember, this is really just about having fun, so don't beat up on yourself if it doesn't look a certain way. I'm going to come in and come in over here too, and then I'm just going to start by going right back out again. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to flare that heart. And then I'm going to go again and do the same thing over here. And flare that heart. Isn't that so cool? Love the way that that looks. Once again, letting those lines come out. Taking your time. This is really great for hand-eye coordination. And I'm building the synapses in the brain to do new things, new challenges. That's what's so great about Zentangle. Learn new tangles all the time. I joke around with my students that I have a Pinterest problem because I love to go onto Pinterest and learn all these different tangles that, you might not see anywhere else. And then I'm going to go ahead and pool my ink into this area right in here. Really building that graphic nature. So cool. And this tangle, when you get to shading and coloring, it's awesome. Okay. So go ahead and finish up yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we're going to add an element in the middle and an element on the side. So many of you know that I do love the Tangle tipple, and tipple is just a circle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little orb that's going to come into the center here. Now, if you want to do this with a pencil, you can always pick up your pencil and just kind of play and figure out where your orb is going to go. That looks pretty good to me. And let me go ahead and zoom in on that so that you can see. I like to make it look like it's just really in there and part of the tangle itself. You can do it many different ways. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pool my ink in these little triangles that have showed up on the outside edge. And this is going to really make this feel graphic. And I'll come down here as well. Super fun. Love, love, love. Okay, so go ahead and do that, and then when we come back, we're going to learn a new tangle. So I've got my scratch piece of paper back in again, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the Tangle laflour, and it is basically, you have a circle with an aura around it. You can do lots of different things with this particular tangle, but I'm going to do a very basic version of it here. So you can see I've got my circle, and then I'm going to do this with 5 points. And for me, at first I could not do a 5-pointed anything, but then I started seeing a person inside of a 5-pointed flower and all that. So you can see I've got his head, his arms, and his legs. And I always think that that's always helpful for when you're doing this kind of stuff. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just going up the top and creating this almost flux-like shape. So I'll go all the way around and do just that. And turn the page a little bit more. Always a good idea. And what I love about laflour is that it has a nice rhythm to it. So basically what it is it's 1 and 2 on this side, and 1 and 2 on this side. And then you just go around 1 and 2, and then if you want to, you can let those two kind of bond together. And then once again, 1 and 2, turning your tile, 1 and 2, and if you want to let those bond, you can. 1 and 2, 1 and 2. Now I might be able to add a little extra on there because I've got a little space. And then I'll come over to this side. 1 and 2, 1 and 2, and then coming over 1 and 2, and you just let it bond. Such a great tangle, laflour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take laflour and I'm going to bring it into our piece that we're working with here. So you can see that I've got these 2 spaces over here. So what we're going to do is a half a laflour. And I'm going to turn it so that I'm going to be working up in this little area right in here. And let's go ahead and zoom in on that. So I'm going to start by just building an arc. So I'll come in and I'll build a really nice arc with a nice aura right behind it. Now with a fleur, all I'm going to do is I'm going to go and make a ray, and I'll make a ray over here, and I'll make a ray over here. So remember what we did with those rays, right? We turned them into these kind of petal-like shapes. And then once you have that, you can go ahead and 1 and 2, 1 and 2, coming over here, 1 and 2. I'm going to let those 2 bond. And then I got to do the side piece in here, 1 and 2, let that kind of connect over there. And then I'm coming over here, 1 and 2, let those connect, and 1, and I think I'm just going to barely be able to get that in there. So you can see that it has this really cool feeling over here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into this little area right in here, and I'm going to pool my ink, but you'll notice that up at the top I'm going to leave it with a little bit of a white sheen in there, and that's just for a little bit of added interest. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn this, and we're going to add laflour to the other side. Now I want it to be very similar in arcing nature to here, so I'm going to try to make my arc about the same size, and I'm going to go ahead and do my aura, and then once again creating those rays of the sun. And then once again coming down, making those petal-like shapes, and starting in. Same thing here. Those two are going to bond pretty quick. Coming over here. And I'll let that come down and let that come down, so that when I zoom out, look at how cool that is. Isn't that neat? So let's go ahead and pool our ink. Super fun. Love the way that that came out. Really, really pretty. So go ahead and finish up yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we're going to do some puddling. So I've gone and picked up my Identipen, and the Identipen, I really love it for pooling ink. And I love this pen because you get two in one. You get a smaller nib and a thicker nib. So it's a great pen to have in your Zentangle arsenal here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in and I'm going to start to pool my ink into these areas so that I can really make this really pop when I'm actually going to come back and do color. And what I love about working with black is that it just takes any color that you're working with and makes it better. It just makes it so much richer and more exciting. So you're going to see me just kind of work my way around, and I'm being very mindful as I work. I don't want to say I'm being cautious, I'm just being present. And just really working my way through the piece on the side and pooling my ink. Coming in down here and I'm coming in and pooling that ink once again. So look at the difference between this side and this side. It just really pops over here, whereas this side it's a lot more quiet. So go ahead and finish up yours. I'm going to go and finish up around this side as well. And then when we come back, we're going to start in with color. And don't worry about this area in here. I have a little quiet piece that we're going to put in there. All right, so have fun, relax, and enjoy what you're doing. Remember, keep your shoulders soft, let your breath be full, and have fun. Let's get started with a little bit of color here. I'm going to pick up two colors. The first color I have in my hand is Process Red, which is PC994. And then I also have in my hand the yellowed orange, which is PC1002. Now remember, if you don't have the same colors as me, I'm just trying to get close here. I've got kind of an earthy yellow and a really kind of wine or magenta color in my hand here. So we're going to start by working inside of our hearts, and I'm going to start with the Process Red first. And what this is going to look like is you can see that my Process Red is pretty well sharpened up here, and I'm just going to start to rub the side of the pencil very, very lightly into the paper here. So it's just a very, very soft dusting of color. And you can see that I'm really just focusing in on my petals that I have here. I'm going to let this dance up just a little bit towards the top here. And then I'm going to let it come over towards the sides. Now I'm going to give this color pencil a little bit of more pressure, and you'll notice that the color will start to get darker as I give this more pressure. I always try to start a little bit lighter first, and then I can come back and give it a little bit more pressure later. So we always want to stay on the lighter side first. Okay? So you can see that I've got this really nice kind of shadow going on where the edges of the heart are. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my yellow now, and I'm just going to dust the edges of my petals in here. Very, very light, nice and soft, coming in little circles to create that line of demarcation and just get a really, really soft edge on it. Now once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this here. You can see that there's a lot of tooth in that paper that I'm using, and it's kind of making the color look a little scratchy, as it were. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a white pencil and start to blur out the color. So I've got my Prisma white. This is the Prisma 938. This is a great pencil, and most color pencil sets will have a white in them. I'm going to start by just blurring the line where the yellow meets the pink, and watch what starts to happen with that color. It really starts to get soft and very pastel-like. I'm going to let it dive down into where that darker red is, but I'm not going to let it go all the way into that area because I want to leave a little bit of that depth of color in here. So you can see that I'm just going around the sides, getting that really nice smooth color. It's a really nice transition. And then if you want to, you can just go very, very lightly into that darker red, not too much, and then you can come back in and go to any places where you might have lost that nice shadow of the red. I like to see a little bit of drama in my colors. For me, it just gives me a lot of joy, so you may decide that you want to give it a shot and come back in and do just a little bit of softening up of that color, but also give it a little drama. You can come back in and play, decide how far out you want it to go, and just have a good time with it. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side in here, so you can go ahead and finish up yours, and then I'll finish up mine over here. Have fun with this. Already you can see that that has brought such a pop of drama into this area right here. I just love the way that that looks. Now many of you know that I do a technique called carrying color, and that is where you are taking a color from one place and putting it into another place. So I want you to notice right here these 4 squares, right? So you can see that there's the head of the flower right here, and then these are the 4 petals that are around it. I want you to locate that on your tile, and what we're going to do is we're going to start to do some shading with the same exact colors that we just were working with here. Now you want to make sure that your pencils are really well sharpened up, and that way you're going to get a much more even and soft feeling to your shading here. So not up here, we're going to the middle one right in here. So I'm just going to start by coming to this petal that's right in here, and I'm going to start on the outside edge of the petal and just do a soft dusting that's going to go diagonally into this corner. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. So nice and soft in here. And then I'm going to come down to the bottom, and I'm going to do another one that's going diagonally, but it will be on the top part of those petals. Nice and soft. So you're not pressing hard. We want these to have almost an ethereal-like quality, almost ghostly. Now once I've got that, I'm going to pick up that process red again, and I'm going to dust it into these areas right in here. And I just love how soft and pastel-y these look. And you can do all of this in black and white. If you're a traditional tangler and you don't want to work with color, you could do this in black and white. For me, I just get a lot of joy out of color, so that's why I shade with color. So you can see that that's really getting a nice soft texture to it. Just going to zoom in on that for a minute. And now I'm going to come back with that white pencil again, and I'm going to soften up that pink with some of the white, and you can already see that it's starting to blur out quite nicely. And then I'm going to start to blur the edge where the yellow is meeting the pink, and I'm going to dive back a little bit. And you can see that just by doing that, look at how that softens up the color quite a bit. And just blurring it out and softening it up. It really has a nice feel to it. So I'm going to go over to the other side and do the same. So I'm really just letting that processed red soften up. And I'm blurring out now towards the yellow and letting it dive back and down. And you can see the difference between the top and the bottom. See how the bottom is really scratchy and the top has that really nice soft feel to it? So I'm going to do the same thing down towards the bottom and finish out that folium there. So go ahead and just do this one, and then when we come back, we're going to start to work around the piece a little bit more. So I've picked back up a little bit of that processed red here, and I'm going to start to give this a little bit of drama right on the edge, just to get it to glow a little bit. You can see that I'm lightening up my touch as I move away from the edge here, and the same thing in here, just coming in, adding in a little bit of drama right on the edge. Just to get it to pop. And I'll come down towards the bottom and do the same thing in here, just a little bit of drama on the bottom. And then you'll see me pick back up that white pencil and just blur out that line of demarcation a little bit so that we get that little bit of drama without it having that hard line of demarcation in there. Just softening it up and keeping it interesting. And same thing in here. I just love that glowiness that it gets. So I'm going to take that same technique and I'm going to start to bring it over to this middle one. So these have 3. So I'm going to come into where the third flower is, or the second flower, so you can see here it is right in here. And I'm just going to start the same technique that I just did over at the other spot in here. So same thing in here, starting with that soft diagonal line going up into the corner. Now you can see I just had an opportunity there because I wasn't paying attention, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to start again, because I can turn that into a highlight later on. And then I'm going to go ahead and come over here and give that a little dusting. And then I'll come over here and give it a little dusting on the top. And I'll give it a little dusting over on the top as well. So I've got those first pieces in here. And then I'll come in with a little bit of that processed red and starting to fill in the sides here. Just like so. And then I'm going to use the same technique that I used on the other side, where I started to blend with that white and come back and forth with different colors. So you can come back in with your white, you can come back in with your pink, and start to work that way. And then when we come back, I'll talk about an oops opportunity, because really this is kind of one of those things where that could happen to anybody. Okay, so go ahead and finish up this one, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about that. Okay, so you can see that I've had this little oops opportunity down in here. But did you know that if you pick up a gummy eraser, that you can, one, lighten it up so that it's not as apparent. Now, it's still there, but it's not that big of a deal. Now, I wasn't going to start in with my blues, but I'm going to start in with it just so that you can see that this is an easily remedied situation here. So in my hand I have a light blue. This is the Light Aqua PC992, and then I'm also going to pick up a darker blue to add just a little bit of drama to it. And this is the Cobalt turquoise, and unfortunately, well, let's see if I can see what that color is. I'll know it in a minute. I think that's PC1004, but you can see that this is the Cobalt turquoise. Now I can take these two, I've got a light blue and a dark blue to work with, and this is a really nice contrast to what's going on right here. So I'm just going to start by picking up that darker blue, and I'm going to start in the lower half of the piece. You can see that I'm going fairly lightly with this. And I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. You can see that I'm just going out to the corners and staying in the lower left hand and the lower right hand. And then I'll come up top and do the upper corners. Now once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and give a little bit of pressure right up top just to give this a little bit of drama. Same thing over here, a little bit of drama. Same thing down here, a little bit of drama. And same thing over here. Just a little bit of drama, being mindful not to drop into the pinks. And then once I've got those the way that I want them, I'm going to take some of that lighter blue, this is the Light Aqua, and I'm going to start to bring it in. And you can see that I'm doing it just very, very softly. Coming in over here. Coming in over here. And dancing down into this petal over here. I love the way these two colors contrast off of each other. I think it's really beautiful. You can see that there's a little bit of grit to this paper that I'm using, but it will balance itself out as soon as I start moving the wax around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to pick up some of that white, and I'm going to start in with the blues first, the darker blues. And you can see that I'm just doing little circles, and I'm going to start to drag some of that color down into where that lighter blue is once I've got this set up here. And I love the way that this blends out so, so nicely. Look at how soft and pastel-y that got. Just by doing that little bit. And you can see I'm kind of bobbing and weaving and bringing that in. So now I'm going to come down to where I had my opportunity, and I want to see, maybe it'll show up, maybe it won't. And then I'll come over here and start to blend into the lighter blues as well. And you can see there's just a little bit of it, but not enough to really make me upset about it. Now, if I really wanted to play, and you know me, I love to play with color. Color is fun. Color is one of those things where you can have all sorts of interesting things happen. What would happen if I picked up that yellow and just dusted a hue of yellow right into that? Oh, that's kind of magical, actually. I kind of like that. What if I did it up here? I kind of like it. And then what would happen if I came in with a little bit of that lighter blue and just broke up the line of demarcation a little bit to make it almost incandescent? I think I like it. So I'll come over to the other side, picking up a little bit of white, and start to do my blend out. So what I often tell my students is, kind of play into an opportunity if it happens. It's almost as if the muses are telling you to try something different, right? So if you ever have a moment where you're like, oh no, think, oh yeah, this is probably going to be something cool. I just have to figure out a way to work with it. I'm just getting in there and playing. And then I can come over to the other side and bring a little bit of that magic into the piece, which is so, so cool. And now, something that I didn't do on the first one is now in the second one, and I like it even better. So that when I zoom out, these two have even more relationship with each other, which is really, really cool. So I can just kind of blend it out and play. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the rest of my folium just like that. So you go ahead and do yours as well. So just the blues now in these three. Have fun. Don't you love a good opportunity? I'm really happy with this. I hope you're happy with this too. All right, so let's continue on with the blues here since we started to work with the blues. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in onto our piece right in here, our laflour. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus not on the centerpiece of laflour, but in the outside pieces of laflour. And I'm going to just go ahead and sharpen up because I can tell that my pencils have gotten a little dull. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by picking up the darker blue first, and I'm going to dust a little bit of darker blue down at the bottom of each of these outside pieces. So you can see here's the tall prong, and then I've got the two smaller prongs on either side. Same thing over here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back in with that lighter blue and dust the top. and then I'm going to let it dip down into the bottom. So I dust the top first, nice and soft, and then I dip into the bottom, and notice how that kind of moves the pigment around. And the reason for that is because there's more wax in that pigment or in that lighter pencil than there is pigment, and so it drags around that darker pigment, which I love, and it's a technique I use a lot. I'm going to come over here and pick this guy up. And then I'll dive down and move that pigment around a little bit. Now you can always come back in with a little bit of white pencil if you're feeling like you want to get it even more pastel-y. You can come in and break up that line of demarcation even more, but you can see how smooth the paper is. It just takes that color and moves it around so easily, which is so great. Love, love, love that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side over here. You go ahead and do yours. So before we put down the blues, and look at how pretty that looks in there, I really love the way that that looks. Let's go ahead and focus on that central tipple that's right in here, or that orb. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my darker blue and just do a soft dusting of that darker blue on the outside edge of the orb. And you'll notice that I'm going to leave a little light source on the left hand side. And then I'm going to push a little bit harder in here just to create a little deep shadow. And when I did this the first time, I thought it looked like earth. I don't know why, but it just did. And I'm going to come in now and add just a touch of that lighter blue. You can see I'm kind of dipping back and forth with that lighter blue into where that dark blue is meeting it, where that shadow is, and then I'll let just a skosh of it kind of pop forward. In that orb. Now if you want to be playful and give a nod back to that opportunity, you can add a little bit of that yellow in there just to be playful, and then I'm going to come in with a little bit of that white and start to blend back into the blues. And this pencil really does need to be sharpened up, so I'm going to sharpen it up real quick. And I'll just keep playing with it until I get it the way that I want it. Just love that little pop of yellow in there. Come back in with some of that darker blue and bring back that shadow a little bit. Make that orb really come to life. Isn't that so fun? And you can, you can just kind of bob and weave back and forth until you get it exactly the way that you like it. It's not always going to be the same, but I just love the way that looks. It's got just this really neat energy in there. So go ahead and do that, and then when we come back, we're going to start to pick up the yellows and the processed red again and really make this pop. So I've got the yellow and the processed red back in my hand again. I'm going to start with the processed red and just do a light dusting of the processed red. And then I'm going to push a little bit harder just to get a little bit of that drama. Same thing in here, just a light dusting, and then press a little bit harder. Same thing over here. And then I'll come over here and I'll do the same. Same thing over here. And same thing over here. And don't worry about these middle pieces. We've got use for them yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and just dust the top with a little bit of that yellow. And I already love the way that this is looking. It's really got such a happy feel to it. And then I can pick up that white, and you want to make sure there's no blue on it, and just give it a little dash of blending in there. So, so cool. Love, love, love that. So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we're going to add a little bit of graphite into the piece in here, and we're also going to work on the head of the flower too. Okay, so loving the way that these are looking, really, really fun, almost like fireworks. So I'm going to come down into the heads of these flowers in here, and we're going to start by picking up a little bit of that processed red, which is the same color we've been working with, but I'm also going to pick up dahlia purple. Now if you don't have dahlia purple, you could always use violet or another color, but dahlia purple is PC1009 here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in with that process red, and I'm just going to do a very, very soft dusting of it. And you're going to see me leave a little bit of that light source in here. Let's go ahead and zoom in on that some more. And then I'll come in with a little bit of that dahlia purple and start to give this a little bit of a shadow on the outside edge. I'll come in and pick up a little bit of that process red again and kind of blur out the edge just to keep it interesting. And then I'm going to pick up the white and just do little circles with that white just to soften this up a little bit. Super pastel-y and pretty. Just love the way that that looks. So I'm going to go over and I'm going to do the opposite side in the same way, and if you want, you go ahead and do yours as well. Remember to enjoy what you're doing. So before we go and add any kind of graphite into this piece, I want to talk about this corner right here. I have processed red in my hand here, and we're going to start by doing a soft shading of color into this corner. So you can see that I'm working on the side of that pencil, and all I'm doing is just a really soft dusting of processed red. Now in this corner we're going to do a really fun tangle called Moon Pie, and we're going to do a variation of Moon Pie. Moon Pie is one of those tangles that is such a great filler because it's very dynamic in the way that it's designed, but it just has a really beautiful feeling to it. My husband thinks that it looks very Turkish, like you would see in Turkish tiles and whatnot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in now, and to do Moon Pie, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start by creating an orb. And you can see that I'm tangling with the same pencil that I was just adding into the space here. So I've got processed red in my hand. This technique that we're using, for many of you, you're familiar, it's called wallpaper, and it's where you're tangling with the color that you've been coloring with. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to create a nice arch over that orb. I'm going to do another arch right over the top of it that's a little bit wider. And then I'll do another one that's a little bit narrower. Once I have that, I'm going to come back into this middle arch. You can see I'm right in here, so I'm not in the first one, I'm in the middle one. And all I'm doing is I'm creating these orbs that are touching each other in the center. I always start my orbs from the center and work my way out. And then you can see that I've got those interstices in here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to dust in those interstices. So you can see that I'm just filling those in. And once I have that, now I can come up to the top and I'm going to do these really pretty leaf-like shapes at the top. And I'll come over to this side and do the same. And I'll let it kind of fall off to the edge there. Now, once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and just add a little bit of a line coming up from the bottom. And you can see that there's a slight curve to that line. Love the way that that looks. So go ahead and do yours, and then when we come back, we're going to add a little bit more shading. So I'm going to come back into the center here and do a very similar shading to what we did with our laflour. So I'm coming in and I'm going very, very softly with the process red here. And you can see that I'm going to leave a little bit of a light source in that upper left-hand corner, giving this a little bit of softness in here. And then I'll come over into the corner and start to give this a little bit of pressure. Now, if you wanted to, you could come in with a little bit of that dahlia purple just for a little bit of drama. And you know me, I do love to layer my colors. I just think it's so pretty and so rich. And then if you want to, you can come back and just dust the edge again with a little bit of the process red. Now you're going to see me come into this area and start to add a little bit of white, and then I'm going to start to dive back into the color. And I really think that this is dramatic and beautiful, but very soft too. Love the way that that looks. And then finally what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into the top in here and just add a soft dusting of that process red, just to give this a little bit of gravity up top. Make it look interesting. If you wanted to give it a little bit of drama, you could press a little bit harder along the edge there. And then if you want to, you can come in and soften that color out a little bit inside of your petals. So for me, what I'm trying to do in here is give a different kind of texture into this part of the piece. I want it to be a little bit quieter and not affect the other tangles that we have so much. You can see that I'm just kind of going in and adding a little bit of softness in there and then through here as well. Now, one of the things that I like to do is I'll come in and just add a very light shadow in here. I'm not pressing hard with this because I don't want it to compete with the background, but it does bring a little bit of dimension in there, which is really nice. Just love the way that that looks, so that when I zoom out, It's got its own feel. It's not competing with what's over here, but it really does have this kind of anchoring quality, which I really like, and I hope you like this idea too. When we come back, we're going to bring the graphite into our hearts. So let's bring the graphite into our hearts here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using the graphite pencil and my blending stump. Remember how I was talking about having a Q-tip if you needed it? This is where you might need it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by shading in the outside, or rather the inside edge of the heart. And you can see that I'm doing little circles with that pencil. I'm not pressing hard. I'm just giving it a little bit of softness. And then I'm going to go to the outside edge and I'm going to do a little bit of graphite on the outside edge. So you'll notice that this is bringing kind of this band of white into the center. Here, let me go ahead and zoom in on that. So you can see that there's this band of white in the center, and we're going to play that up a little bit. I'm just coming in, getting it the way that I want it to be. And once I have that, I'm going to pick up this tortillon, or my blending stump, and you can see that this paper is so smooth, it just glides. It makes that graphite just move around. It's really nice to work with. So you can see that as I'm, bringing this shading around, I'm maintaining that gleam of light right in the center. Almost as if it was neon. Isn't that so cool? I just love the way that that looks. And then what you can do is you can come in and press a little bit harder with that graphite right along the edge for a little bit more depth. And then I can come back in and blur it out. And over here as well. Coming in and maybe adding a little bit more in the inside and on that inside edge, just to keep it interesting. Now let's just say you lose your white and you're doing all this graphite work and you're like, oh no, I've lost my white. So some of you know that I really love these gummy erasers. They're wonderful, and what they're great for is that you can shape them, and if you need to take out some of that graphite, you can take out some of that graphite just by shaping your gummy to do what you need it to do. So I don't want you to see the eraser as a way of fixing a problem so much as bringing back in a highlight here and a highlight there. It's pretty great for a tool all by itself. So you can see that that's really, really fun. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and then I'll come over here and do the same thing in here. So you go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine. So I'm going to take some of that graphite and I'm going to bring it just into those little pieces that we had that were in between in the flower, and just give those a little bit of a blurring in here. Now I'm also going to pick up my purple pencil here. This is the Dahlia purple, and I'm just going to give a soft dusting inside of the frame here. You'll notice that I'm just going to come in and do a little dusting right down at the bottom and right up at the top, and I'm going to leave a little bit of a white sheen in the centerpiece here. So I'm just kind of moving back and forth through this area. I'm going to give this a little pressure right here. and down in here. And I'll come up in here and do the same. I'm going to pick up a little bit of that white and I'm going to give it a little blur just to soften the whole thing up. Same thing up in here. Nice blur. I'm going to turn it on its side here. Giving that a little softness. And then once again right in here. It just brings a little bit of interest into the frame without taking away from the piece here, which I love. So go ahead and do yours, and then when we come back, we're going to add a little bit of white highlighting to this piece. So I'm going to add some white highlights into the orb in the center. So all I'm going to do is just give this a little bit of an arch and then a little teardrop at the bottom of it and a couple of dots. I'm going to do the same thing over on the side here, just a little bit of an arch with a little teardrop and then maybe a little dot. Same thing over here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out here to our piece that's in the corner and add a little bit of a highlight in there with a little bit of an arch. And if you wanted to, you could even bring in a little highlight into the center. Even if you wanted to come into these over here and give it a little bit of a pop, you could, which is kind of fun. Love the way that that gets everything to look a little bit watery and very pretty. Now the last piece that I'm going to do is I'm going to come into these little diamonds in here and add a little pop of white into the diamonds. You want to be mindful of where your hands are so that you don't get a little smear or a smudge on the piece. And I think that that looks really nice. Even if you wanted to jump out into the corners and do these in the corners, you could do that as well, just to give that a little bit of pop too. So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and when we come back, we'll do some final touches. Is that fun or what? I just love the way these came out. Such a fun composition, and I hope that you enjoyed it too. You can see that I've got the original over here. I did some things a little bit differently in here, but I really liked the simplicity of this one and really enjoyed it. So I'm going to go ahead and put my chop in, and I'm going to put my chop in actually with my color pencil, and I'm just going to hide it down in this corner in here and do it as wallpaper, which I think is really fun. And this is just the important time to take a look at your piece and really enjoy what you did. I hope that you really enjoyed what you did here today, and I just really enjoyed teaching this class for you. It's been such a great experience. Valentine's Day in the Zentangle community is such a special time because there's so many great heart tangles out there, and I love sharing them with you. So if you enjoyed the class, please give it a thumbs up. Even better, leave it a nice review. And even best, hit the subscribe button up at the top, and that way you'll be notified every time I add a new class to my channel. So that's it for me. I'm Rami Marks, your Tangled Yogi. Thanks for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye for now.